Hello guys, it's me back for another video, and today we're going to be making a video about the GT740 and how well it performs in 2019. So the GT740 was released in 2014 as a budget graphics card, which was sold below £100, which you may think would be popular in budget builds for the price, but as it turns out, it wasn't actually very popular, as people who wanted a budget build got a GT730, and for those who wanted to spend a bit extra would have got a GTX 750 for not much more, which would give you a lot better performance. So because it's not very popular, not many people actually know about it, which means you can get it for actually cheaper than a GT 730 nowadays. So when I got mine, I got it for £18 second hand in a shop called Kex, and a GT 730 in there cost £28, so £10 less than a GT 730 with a lot better performance. So today I'm going to show you how well it stacks up in like modern titles. But first I'll show you the specs. So now I'm going to talk to you about the specs of the graphics card. So to put it into perspective, I'm going to compare it to a GT 1030, which is a modern low-end graphics card made by the same company, Nvidia, based on the Pascal architecture, compared to this one based on the Kepler architecture, so it's quite a bit modern architecture. But they don't fare too different in games, but I'll compare the specs of them to you now. So both the GT740 and the GT1030 both have 384 CUDA cores, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does handle well in modern games. You'd be surprised. So the GT740 has a base clock of 1033 MHz, which is a little bit less than what the GT1030 has at 1227, which is a bit more, which you may think would handle a lot more in games. But yeah, when it comes to memory, the GT740 is quite a bit better. So the GT740 only has 1 gig of GDDR5, where the GT1030 has 2 gigs of GDDR5. So you may be wondering why I'm saying the GT740 is better memory. Well, it's actually quite a lot faster. So it has a 5,000 megahertz. It has 5,000 megahertz clock speed on the on the memory, but and the GT1030 actually has 6,000 megahertz. But the difference is that because the bus is actually smaller on it, it only has 48 gigabits a second, whether the other one has 80 gigabits a second. So now onto the benchmarks. Now sadly I struggled to get any recordings off of it. No matter which recording software I used with this graphics card, it would literally run at like 2 FPS on the recording, but like the actual game would run normally. So sadly, and I'd done all the recordings all in one go, and then afterwards I realised that it wasn't working. I couldn't be bothered to redo it. But I have got the numbers from the tests I did. So starting with Forza Horizon 4, which when I tried to boot it up, first gave me a warning saying it was below the minimum requirements, but I turned it on anyway. So I put everything on the lowest amount of settings at 720p. And this is the only game I had to turn down to 720p to run. But eventually it did actually run okay. So we got average FPS of 26, which was, you may think sounds okay, but it was a bit bad. So it wasn't a great experience, because it did have a minimum FPS of 12. So it was kind of a bit choppy. So I still wanted to see how well we could run like Forza games in general. So Forza Horizon 3 I didn't run, as that's notoriously unoptimized and wouldn't run with this. So I went to an older Forza game, so Forza Motorsport 6 Apex, which came out a few years earlier, and funnily enough actually lists the GT740 as a minimum requirement, and it's the only game here that actually lists the GT740 as the minimum requirement. But it did list the 2 gig version, and I've only got the 1 gig version. So when I loaded up the game, it did give me a warning saying I didn't have enough VRAM. But when I actually got into the game, it ran perfectly fine. And you can click don't show again, so that doesn't always pop up. So every time you click on a race, it will say low VRAM. But actually, that didn't really matter. As long as you have enough physical RAM, it should be okay. So I have 12 gigs of physical RAM in the system I tested it in with the i7-3770, and in that game I got an average of 42 FPS, even at 1080p that was, everything at the lowest. I didn't decide to move anything higher, as I didn't think that was playable enough. So I think we were pushing the system a bit too far, so I think it was time to run a bit of an easier to run game. So starting with Fortnite, the average FPS the FPS kind of went everywhere depending on where you are on the map. So the average FPS worked out to be 62 FPS. But when you're inside buildings, you'll see around like between 70 and 80 FPS. When you're outside on the map, where it's quite busy, you can go into the high 40s. And that was with everything on low settings, apart from textures, which were on Epic, and view distance were on Epic, which looked pretty good. And that's kind of the way you want to play anyway, even if you had a good PC, and that's pretty good setup. But if you want, you'll get around similar FPS if you just want to put everything on medium as well. So then another pretty easy to run game, CS:GO, which is quite popular. You can actually, I got an average of 58 FPS at 1080p on max settings, which was quite good. But for CS:GO, I think you should turn it down to like high, just to make sure you get 60 FPS all the time. As the minimum on max settings, the minimum FPS is 53, so it did dip below a bit, but it didn't actually go too far below, which is pretty good. And that was on 1080p, so that's pretty good. And if you actually, for some reason, running this graphics card on a 120Hz monitor, you can get over 100 FPS on low settings, that is. So starting with a very easy to run game, which actually lists Intel HD graphics as the minimum requirement, which I just wanted to test to see how good you can run games that list Intel HD. Well, so does Fortnite actually, but anyway, which is War Thunder. So at max settings, War Thunder can run at 35 FPS. Exactly on the average, whereas on high settings you can get an average of 49 FPS, and then medium we got an average of 68 FPS, and I didn't go any lower because most people with this won't have a higher than 60 Hz monitor, and that was all using airplanes at 1080p. But I think you should go for high settings for the best quality to performance ratio. 60 FPS doesn't really matter in this sort of game, at least I don't think so. And then for my last game, PUBG, I actually lost the statistics from it, so I can't remember what the average FPS was. But I do remember playing it, and it was in the high 20s, low 30s most of the time on low settings. And actually, I found it quite playable. And actually, if you're inside buildings, it'd actually go quite high to 50 FPS. And I said actually quite a lot then. But yeah. So I hope this helps you guys if you're ever wondering to get this, and I strongly advise this for a low-end system. In fact, I no longer have it anymore, which is why I couldn't retake the benchmarks, as I sold it to a friend who only had an Intel HD 4000 in his system. He has a desktop PC with no graphics card, and he does play quite a bit of PC games, but just struggled to run them, so I sold it to him for a good price. So yeah, I no longer have it anymore. But yeah, I'd strongly advise it if you have a system like my friend. I strongly advise picking it up. Although it's currently out of stock in Kex, I got the last one in stock, which is for £18. But if they ever come back in stock, keep an eye on it if you're looking for a low-end graphics card. If it's never in stock, the more popular card, which you can find like loads more in stock in Kex, is £28, and that's the GT 730, which is it's a more worse card, but it is in stock a lot more if you can't find any GT 740s. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And I'm actually really sorry if you're one of my subscribers currently for not uploading in a while. I know it's been like a month, and I know I've actually got quite a few hardware changes on my main rig that I should be able to make videos on, but I'm literally just I had videos made, and it's just really a pain to actually upload them because my Wi-Fi is quite bad. It's like this video that you're watching right now, I may have actually been editing this about a week ago, so I'm currently editing this on the 4th of February, and whenever you see the date of this uploaded, you can tell that I sort of do wait a while. I don't know, I may upload this video soon, so I put some effort into editing it. But anyway, see you guys in the next one.